Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, That Model Railway Guy, and welcome to another exciting review. As you can see, today I'm taking a look at the gorgeous Caledonian 812 class, and this particular model is of the preserved loco number 828. The model was commissioned by Rails of Sheffield and made by Bachmann, and it's taken quite a while to get here, but now that it has arrived, it does look like it was worth the wait. Now again, this is another £200 model, which is surprising for an 060, but then Bachmann have always been a little bit more expensive in my opinion. The loco does have some extra features like firebox LEDs and a pre-installed speaker though, which are great for some people, especially those that use DCC. Of course, if you run on analog, those features will be less important to you, and I can definitely see the argument here that you're having to pay extra for stuff that you won't use. Now, while I'm on the subject of DCC, one interesting thing to note is that the loco was originally intended to come with a 21-pin decoder socket, but at some point during the manufacturing process, that changed to a Next 18 socket. The box still has the 21-pin marking on it though, which is odd as I can't imagine that this was a last-minute change. But anyway, that's something just to be aware of so you don't get caught out if you do want to fit this for DCC in the future. On to the review itself though, and we have to start with this beautiful livery, don't we? The 812 is in this deep Prussian blue, and as I mentioned at the start, this is the current livery that the preserved loco is wearing. It's not often you see locos in this colour actually. I mean, I guess it's similar to the early BR blue that some of the steam locos wore, but this just seems richer somehow. We also have this lovely ornate black and white lining that runs all along the length of the boiler, and this can be seen on the side of the cab too. We also have the number plate, which is printed really nicely, although you don't get any etched plates in the detail pack. That is a shame for a £200 model, and it's something Bachmann do on their other locos, so they're obviously capable of doing it. I guess Rails of Sheffield just never asked for them. Additionally, on the tender we also have the Caledonian Railway lettering, and that's got the crest in the middle as well, and to my eyes this looks superb, but I suspect you'll have a much better view on the close-up. Moving down from the crest, you can see that the tender's underframe is painted in this, well, I'm not really sure how to describe it. It's a sort of dark red, brown, almost wine kind of colour. That is also complemented with lots of white lining around all the separate areas, which really looks fantastic. Moving along to the main part of the loco, you can see that this colour scheme is repeated here along the footplate, which it's worth mentioning is made of metal, along with the splashers too. The footplate also has a separately fitted pipe running along its length too, which you can just see here from a slightly higher angle. It's a nice detail, but it does feel quite delicate, so it's something to be aware of when you're handling the loco. Going back to the splashers, these have the nice Prussian blue colour again, and more of that black and white lining. You can also see that this particular one has a builder's plate on it, and again, I'm hoping you'll be able to see that better through the camera lens than I can even with my glasses on. A little further back, we also have the silver reversing rod, which I believe is made of plastic. Again, it would have been nice if this was a metal part, but I have to give Bachmann credit here. The way they've done it makes it very difficult to tell, and it's much better than the metallic silver paint used by other manufacturers. At the front of the loco, we can see things up here are done just as well. The smoke box dart is really nice in that distinctive Caledonian style. At least it's the style I've always associated with the Caledonian Railway, and that is picked out in gold and silver. The hinges for the smoke box door are picked out in silver too, and you can see we also have some really nice metal handrails that run across the front and back towards the cab. These really do finish off the model nicely and give it a nice shine, just the sort of thing you would expect from a preserved loco. The buffer beam, meanwhile, has some of the most complex printing I've ever seen in such a small space. There's the lining around the outside, the two different base colours, and also the running number, and it's all printed perfectly. And additionally, we do get metal sprung buffers on this model, which we all know doesn't really make much of a difference, but it's sort of expected on a model of this high quality. We can also see behind the smoke box is a representation of the inside motion. In fact, I'm going to show it from the other side here, as you can see it a bit better from this angle, but it's really nicely picked out in red and seems fairly complex. This seems to be becoming much more standard now on locos with space between the boiler and the frames, and it just shows how even in the last few years what we can expect from our models has continued to improve. While we're around this side of the loco, I'll just take the quick opportunity to show you the Westinghouse pump. Again, this is really nicely made with some very fine pipework around it, and it's finished off nicely by the livery. Now, I mentioned earlier that the footplate is made of metal, and that is certainly a good thing because it appears as if the majority of the body is plastic. This does also mean that we have what looks like a very slight seam along the top of the boiler. Now, I'm not going to pretend this is a huge issue because it's not. It's only just visible in the close-ups, and you have to look very hard to see it from a normal viewing distance. But had they gone for a metal boiler, they wouldn't have had this problem, and they would have gained the benefit of giving the loco more weight too, so yeah. Anyway, back towards the cab, we do have the safety valves and the whistle. The safety valves are metal, which is great to see, and the whistle is plastic, but it's a very fine separately fitted piece. There's also another pipe that runs along the length of the entire boiler and joins to the front of the cab. I'm not going to pretend like I know what it's for because I'm far from an expert on, well, anything really, but it looks good and it fits into the cab really well. Speaking of the cab, let's take a look inside, and you can see there is a whole host of separately fitted parts in here, all picked out in the relevant colours and with dials even painted on the gauges. I believe we also have separately fitted glazed windows too, or at least if it is a single piece it's done well enough that I can't tell the difference. As I mentioned earlier, the loco does have firebox LEDs, and there are actually two of them as you can see here. First up we have the red LED. And then we also have a secondary yellow colour, which is a bit more faint, but it does add some nice variation into the effect. Now, out of the box, these don't flicker. I've programmed them to do this on DCC, and in fact, if you're running on analog, then you'll just get a constant red LED when you run the loco. The yellow light won't shine at all. I will say it's quite a subtle effect. The LEDs themselves don't actually seem to be mounted near the hole for the firebox, so most of the light you see is actually reflected off the floor of the cab. I don't know if this was a deliberate choice or not, but it does seem a little bit odd. I have noticed too that you can sort of make out the circuit board behind them, which does break the illusion a bit, but I imagine most people will run these with the firebox LEDs on. One last thing to mention about the cab is the red stripe along the back of the roof. Now, I don't know why this is there. I'm guessing it's something that the loco now has in preservation, but it's a nice detail that's a little bit different, and it's good to see Bachmann picked up on it. One thing I'm not so keen on is the tender connection. Most tender engines these days are permanently fixed to their tenders, but Bachmann seem to have reverted to the old style of just having the drawbar hook over a pin. Most manufacturers have moved away from this practice, so why Bachmann have decided to stick with this old school method is a real mystery, especially when we're seeing other manufacturers coming up with much smarter solutions, like Dapple for example. Remember on the D-Class, which by the way was also a commission for Rails of Sheffield, it had a push-fit tender connection which was really easy to use and removed all possibility of breaking the wires. I really hope Bachmann aren't going to be stubborn on this and refuse to change, because it really is quite outdated now. Anyway, after that little rant, we'll just take a quick look at the tender now, and we do have a nice coal load which I believe is removable. Something I have seen people get a bit worked up about online is the thickness of the top of the tender. Now, admittedly, it is a bit thicker than other models we've seen, but I have to admit that it's not immediately apparent, at least not in my opinion. Perhaps if you're really familiar with the prototype, it will be something that bothers you, but honestly, if you're just a general enthusiast like most people, I don't think this is really much of an issue. Remember as well that what may be really obvious in a close-up like this isn't so noticeable from a reasonable distance, but hopefully these images will allow you to make your own mind up. And finally we come to the back of the tender, which has more of the nice black and white lining and also a large print of the loco's number. I don't know if this is a Caledonian railway practice or if it's something unique to the loco in preservation, but either way it's a really nice detail. Again, something that's a bit different, and like the rest of the printing on the loco, it's done very well. So the Caledonian 812 is a really stunning loco, but does its running capabilities match its good looks? Well, I'm turning the power up now, and you can see the wheels have just started to turn very slowly. This is a really nice slow controlled speed, and just like that Class 47 I reviewed from Bachmann recently, I definitely feel like I could leave the loco running at this speed. Now, I will say it's a bit noisy when running slowly like this, although that is something that has only appeared since I put a decoder in it. Of course, as I speed the loco up, you'll hear that buzz has gone away now, and the loco runs really quietly, and yeah, it is literally just the sound of the wheels turning on the rolling road. Again, it's nice and consistent, and I have to admit, this does run like you would expect a £200 loco to run. Turning the speed right up now, and again the Caledonian 812 is coping just fine. Sometimes with expensive locos like this, you can be a bit worried to run them at higher speeds for fear that they're so delicate that they'll shake themselves apart somehow. I have to say though that Bachmann have always been relatively good in this sense, and generally I feel confident that their locos will run at whatever speed you want them to, no matter how unrealistic it may be. So, with the loco now slowing down very gradually, we'll let it come to a complete stop and then test it in reverse. And as you can see, going backwards it runs just as well at the slow speed. This is definitely a loco I feel like you could do some shunting with. The control is there to run consistently at this speed, and considering it has all-wheel pickup too, there's not really much danger of it ever stalling. At a more normal pace, again it's a really nice runner, just like it was going forwards too. I think the metal footplate definitely helps here. It makes it feel a lot more solid when it's running, which is a really good thing. And going faster again, like I said before, the loco has no trouble at these sorts of speeds. So we've seen it runs well on the rolling road, but how will that translate to running on the layout? Well, I know it's what you've all been waiting for, so I think it's time to hook this engine up to some carriages and get the Caledonian 812 running on the modular model railway. So as the train makes its way round the layout, I'd say the Caledonian 812 has been a big success for Rails of Sheffield and Bachmann. The loco isn't without its issues, and there are some which I feel could have been easily avoided, but generally I don't feel like those detract too much from what is generally a spectacular little loco. That said, it is a small engine for £200, and I think there will be a lot of people out there who will perhaps think that that price isn't worth it, especially as we've seen similar sized locos from other manufacturers at a much lower price. But on the other end of the scale, Scottish modelers have been crying out for more locos from the Caledonian Railway for a while now, and I don't think they will be disappointed at all. I suppose that's what Rails of Sheffield is relying on really, that they can make slightly more obscure models like this, and while it may not be the top of the list for every modeler, there are those out there who are willing to pay that bit extra to get a model of a loco that is right for their railway. As for me, well, I am certainly very happy with mine in its preserved livery, and I think it'll look right at home on my heritage railway layout as a visiting engine once I've got all the scenery complete. So that's going to be it for this time guys, thank you so much for joining me, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notifications for future videos. For now though, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!